There are songs you hear, and then there are songs you remember hearing. Not just the melody, not just the lyrics, the specific moment, where you were, who you were with, what the air felt like, what you were carrying that day that the song somehow knew about before you did. R&B and soul music has more of those songs than any other genre in history, because the artists who made them were not chasing trends or filling formats. They were telling the truth about love, about loss, about survival, about what it costs to feel everything as deeply as a human being is capable of feeling. These are 12 of those records, pulled from 4 decades, each one a sonic landmark, each one a memory waiting to be triggered. You have heard these songs. Today, you are going to hear the stories behind them, and you will never hear them the same way again. Number 12. Whitney Houston, I Will Always Love You, 1992. Dolly Parton wrote this song in 1973 as a quiet farewell to her mentor Porter Wagoner.
We both know I'm not what you need.
A graceful goodbye, personal, specific, and country in every sense of the word. It went to number 1 on the country charts and lived there as a beloved piece of that tradition. Then David Foster rebuilt it from the foundations up, and Whitney Houston sang it.
Life treats you kind.
The a cappella opening, no instrumentation, just the voice alone with the lyric, is one of the great opening gambits in the history of recorded music. A statement of absolute confidence. The voice needs nothing. The voice is the record. The key change before the final chorus is the moment that converts a great performance into a phenomenon. Whitney Houston did not simply cover Dolly Parton's song. She had a conversation with it, found dimensions in the lyric that the original had not fully explored, and delivered them with a voice capable of making every one of those dimensions feel inevitable. Dolly Parton said the royalty checks funded Dollywood. She said it with complete, genuine affection. The record has outlasted every chart position, every award, every statistic attached to it. What remains is the voice asking a question that every person who has ever loved someone and let them go already knows the answer to. Number 11. Boise 2 Men, End of the Road, 1992. 13 weeks at number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100. At the time of release, the longest any single had held that position in the chart's history. A record that had stood since the 1950s, broken by 4 young men from Philadelphia, delivering a breakup song written and produced by Babyface. Boys the Second. Men formed at the Philadelphia High School for the creative and performing arts, the same institution that produced Patti LaBelle and Grover Washington Jr. They had spent their formative years studying the vocal harmony tradition of the city's soul history, the Delphonics, the Stylistics.
My heart hurts, baby. I feel pain too. Baby, please.
50 years of Philadelphia harmonic intelligence absorbed and delivered into a 90s context. What Babyface built for them was a production framework of extraordinary emotional intelligence, slow, spacious, giving every harmony room to breathe before the next one arrived. The song captures the specific bewilderment of a relationship ending, not anger, not bitterness, but the genuine disorientation of a person who has not yet accepted what is already finished. That specific emotional territory is why it connected with 13 weeks of audiences simultaneously. 50 years of vocal tradition, one record, 13 weeks. At number 1, the math is not complicated. The execution was simply perfect.
You just don't realize.
But before we go any further, if nobody ever told you about this channel, think about how close you came to never finding this. Don't let that happen to somebody else, and don't let it happen to you again. Hit subscribe right now, turn on notifications, Because where we're going next in this story, you cannot afford to tap out. All right, now back to it. Number 10, Ribbon in the Sky. Stevie Wonder, 1982. By 1982, Stevie Wonder had already produced one of the greatest runs in the history of recorded music. Talking Book.
May I once again.
Inner Visions. Fulfillingness First Finale. Songs in the Key of Life. A consecutive stretch of albums across the 1970s that represented creative achievement at a level that almost no artist in any genre has ever matched. Ribbon in the Sky.
But what is that?
Came from the original Musiquarium compilation, and in the context of everything surrounding it, it is one of the most quietly extraordinary things he ever recorded. Not the most ambitious, not the most layered, the most intimate. The production is deliberate in its restraint, piano and voice essentially.
There's a ribbon in the sky for
Stevie allowing the melody to carry the weight rather than the arrangement. A love song of genuine tenderness from a man who had spent the previous decade demonstrating that he could do virtually anything a recording studio allowed, and who chose, for this record, to do almost nothing. To let the feeling speak without dressing it in anything that might compete for attention. That restraint is the mastery. Anyone can add. The discipline to subtract to recognize that the song needs nothing more than what is already present is a different and considerably rarer skill. Stevie Wonder had it completely. Ribbon in the Sky is the proof. Number 9, Luther Vandross. A House is Not a Home. 1981. Burt Bacharach and Hal David wrote this song in 1964 for the film of the same name.
And no one there you can get.
Dionne Warwick recorded the original, a version of genuine beauty that demonstrated exactly what the melody was capable of in the right hands. Luther Vandross recorded it on his debut album and did something that almost no cover version in the history of popular music has managed. He did not simply equal the original. He claimed it so completely, so finally, that the song now belongs to him in the cultural memory in a way that supersedes its actual authorship. Luther understood what this song required at a molecular level. It is a song about absence, about a physical space that has become emotionally uninhabitable.
Mistake keep us apart.
Because the person who made it a home is gone. The architecture is still present. The walls, the furniture, the rooms. But without the one person who gave the space its meaning, it is simply a building. His vocal does not interpret that feeling. It inhabits it.
Still in love.
Every phrase lands exactly where it needs to land, heavy enough to carry the weight, restrained enough to let the weight breathe. The production by Luther himself gives the voice every inch of space it needs, and nothing more. Burt Bacharach wrote the song. Luther Vandross made it immortal. Both things are permanently true.
So, darling, have a heart.
Number 8, A.L. Green, Let's Stay Together. 1972. Al Green recorded Let's Stay Together at Royal Studios in Memphis with producer Willie Mitchell. The partnership that defined the High Records sound and produced a run of records in the early 1970s that represent some of the most purely beautiful soul music ever committed to tape. The record went to number 1 on both the pop and R&B charts. It is one of those songs that sounds like it has always existed.
But you never.
Like it was not written and recorded, but discovered, found whole, and complete, already present in some space between music and memory, where the best records live. What Willie Mitchell built as a sonic framework, the specific warmth of that Memphis recording environment. The way the strings breathe around the vocal without crowding it. The rhythm section, operating at a temperature somewhere between urgent and unhurried, is the production philosophy that makes the record feel timeless, rather than dated. Al Green's vocal is the most natural sounding thing on the record.
I wanna know and turn around and make up.
Which means it is the most precisely controlled. That paradox naturalness, as the product of complete technical mastery, is the defining quality of every great soul vocal performance. Green understood it instinctively. Let's Stay Together is the most complete expression of that understanding in his catalog. Number 7. Billy Paul, Me and Mrs. Jones. 1972. Kenny Gamble and Leon Huff wrote this song and gave it to Billy Paul, who had been recording for years,
Holding hands.
without the mainstream breakthrough his voice deserved. The record is about adultery. Specific, direct, completely unrepentant. Two people meeting every day at the same cafe, knowing exactly what they are doing it anyway. What Billy Paul does with that material
It hurts so much inside.
is a masterclass in restraint. The subject invites drama. Every instinct the lesser vocalist has would push toward more volume, more emotion, more performance. Paul does the opposite. He delivers every line with a near conversational quietness
And we're gonna hold hands like we used to. We're gonna talk it over.
that makes the listener feel like they are sitting across the table from a man telling them something he has never said out loud before. That restraint is what makes the record timeless. The drama is in the space, in the pauses, in the places where the voice pulls back and lets the arrangement carry the weight for a moment. Before returning. It went to number 1 and stayed for 3 weeks. In 1972, a song about adultery, unrepentant, honest, emotionally precise, at the top of the American charts. That alone is a cultural fact worth sitting with. The music industry, in that moment,
We meet every day.
through Philadelphia International Records, trusted the audience to handle the full truth of human experience. The audience confirmed that trust by making the record number 1.
We got a thing going.
Number 6. Curtis Mayfield, Superfly. 1972. Curtis Mayfield wrote and produced the entire Superfly soundtrack in less than 2 weeks.
Feeling good for the man, Superfly, here I stand, secret.
That timeline is not a boast. It is a documented fact about the working conditions under which one of the most important albums of the decade was created. The film was nearly finished. The studio time was compressed. Mayfield worked at a pace that the circumstances demanded and produced something that permanently transcended the film it was made for. Superfly as a song operates on multiple levels simultaneously, which is the defining quality of everything Mayfield produced at his best. On the surface, it is a character study, a portrait of a hustler navigating a world where the legitimate paths to dignity
Make your world what you want it to be.
and prosperity had been systematically closed off. Underneath that, it is a political document, an indictment of the conditions that produce the character, the systems that make the hustle rational, the society that creates the fly and then condemns him for flying. The production Mayfield's guitar, the orchestration by Johnny Pate, the rhythm section operating in the specific pocket that only Memphis and Chicago musicians of that era could find, is an instrument of that argument. The music does not celebrate what the lyric critiques. It holds both things simultaneously, with complete moral clarity. Curtis Mayfield made a film soundtrack in 2 weeks and produced a cultural document that is still being discussed and studied 50 years later. The music did not require more time. It required that specific mind, operating at that specific moment, telling that specific truth.
I'm your doctor when in need. Want some coke, have some weed. You know me.
Number 5. The Jackson. 5. I'll Be There. 1970. The Jackson 5 had already released 3 consecutive number 1 singles before I'll Be There.
I keep holding on.
I Want You Back, ABC, The Love You Save. 3 number ones in a row, an achievement that established them as the most commercially potent new act Motown had signed in years, and introduced Michael Jackson to a global audience as a vocalist of extraordinary natural ability. I'll Be There was different from everything that preceded it. Slower, more vulnerable, a ballad rather than a funk pop record, and it asked something different from the 12-year-old voice at the center of it, not the exuberant attack of the earlier hits. But a kind of tenderness, a specific emotional openness that most adult vocalists would have found difficult to access authentically. Michael Jackson accessed it effortlessly. The performance is one of the most emotionally mature things a 12-year-old has ever committed to tape. Not because it sounds adult, but because it sounds real, genuinely felt rather than performed. Jermaine's vocal contributions give the record its harmonic depth. The Hal Davis production gives it its warmth. But the reason I'll Be There outlasted everything around it and became the defining Jackson 5 record for a generation of listeners is Michael's voice at 12 years old, already doing something that could not be taught. Number 4. Marvin Gaye, What's Going On? 1971. Berry Gordy told Marvin Gaye this was the worst thing he had ever heard. Those are the documented specific words. Talk to me, honey, so you can see. Gordy's objection was strategic. Motown was a hit machine that had spent a decade avoiding content that could alienate any segment of its audience. A song about Vietnam, police brutality, and a country tearing itself apart was not a Motown record. People, you know, we've got to. Marvin told Gordy if the song was not released, he would never record for the label again. Gordy released it. It became the best-selling Motown single in the label's history. It opened the door for every R&B artist who wanted to make music about something that actually mattered, and it demonstrated with commercial finality that the audience for black music was ready to receive complexity, nuance, and direct political engagement without flinching. The production is unlike anything Motown had released before. Party sounds in the background, multiple vocal layers, a density of texture that felt live and spontaneous rather than engineered. Marvin had insisted on producing it himself against the Motown system, against the standard process, against every convention that had governed the label since its founding. Berry Gordy later called it one of the greatest records ever made. The worst thing he had ever heard. One of the greatest records ever made. The distance between those two verdicts is the distance between what the industry expected and what the music actually was. Number 3. Aretha Franklin, I Never Loved a Man, The Way I Love You. 1967. Columbia Records had Aretha Franklin for 6 years and fundamentally failed to understand what they had. They put her in pop context, jazz context, adult contemporary context, technically correct in every case, missing the essential truth of what her voice was built to do in every case. Jerry Wexler at Atlantic understood it differently. He heard a church singer, a woman whose entire musical identity had been formed in the gospel tradition before she ever set foot in a commercial recording studio. He flew her to Muscle Shoals, to Fame Studios, to a rhythm section of white Southern musicians who had developed one of the tightest, most emotionally sympathetic grooves in American recording. The session nearly fell apart. There was an altercation. The recording was left unfinished. Wexler brought the incomplete tracks back to New York, overdubbed what was necessary, and released what they had. What they had was one of the most explosive debut performances in the history of recorded music. Aretha Franklin had been making records for 6 years before this. She had been performing since childhood. She was 24 years old, and every year of that experience was present in every phrase she sang at Muscle Shoals. This was not a performance. It was an arrival, the moment where everything that had been developing in the dark finally found the light. And once the world heard it, there was no going back to what music had been before. Number 2. Marvin Gaye and Tammy Terrell, Ain't No Mountain High Enough. In 1967, Nicholas Ashford and Valerie Simpson wrote it as a song about absolute commitment. The unconditional promise that no distance, no obstacle, no circumstance will prevent the arrival of someone who truly loves you. Gaye and Terrell recorded it as the first of their duet collaborations, and the chemistry between them was immediate and unmistakable.
I think as far back as I can remember hearing music and hearing people sing.
Their voices did not blend in the conventional sense. They were too distinct, too individually strong for that. What they created instead was genuine conversation, each performance shaped by the presence and the pressure of the other. In October of 1967, during a live performance at a college in Virginia, Tammy Terrell collapsed in Marvin Gaye's arms on stage. The brain tumor that would take her life in March of 1970 had announced itself. She was 24 years old. Marvin Gaye never fully recovered. He retreated from live performance for years. The grief became the emotional foundation for what's going on. The duets they made together carry a weight that was not present at the time of their making. The joy in those recordings is real. The loss that now frames them is also real. Both things exist simultaneously, and neither cancels the other. That coexistence of joy and grief, recorded without either party knowing the grief was coming, is what makes this record not just timeless, but irreplaceable. Number 1. Sam Cooke, A Change Is Gonna Come. 1964. Sam Cooke was afraid of this song. The inspiration was specific. He and his entourage were turned away from a whites-only motel in Louisiana in 1963. 6 years a star. His records on pop radio, purchased by white teenagers across the country, and he could not get a room. That gap between the public embrace of his art and the private denial of his humanity became the emotional core of everything the song says. He held it back for months. His label was uncomfortable with the political content. Cooke himself understood the cost of a black artist making a direct statement about race at that specific moment.
Oh, yes it will.
In American history. He released it as a B-side in December of 1964, 3 weeks after he was shot dead in a Los Angeles motel. The civil rights movement received the song like something written specifically for their moment, not because it offered comfort or reassurance,
Like the river I've been running.
but because it offered certainty, the specific, unqualified certainty that change was not just possible, it was coming, that the arc of history was bending, however slowly and however painfully, toward justice. The orchestration strings, French horns,
And I know a change gonna come.
the full weight of a arrangement built to match the scale of what the lyric was saying gives the record a gravity that separates it from everything else Sam Cooke recorded. He knew it was different. He was afraid of it because he knew exactly what it was saying and exactly who would hear it.
It's been a long.
Sam Cooke did not live to see the changes the song promised. The song has outlasted every obstacle that stood in the way of what it promised. That is what timeless means. Not that the record sounds current, that the truth at its center has never stopped being necessary. That is why it is number one.
Lord,